Needless to say, after the launch of the disastrous Wii U, Nintendo were on the ropes. The Wii U was Nintendo's least successful console in history, and not just by a metric of units sold. Nintendo's Wii U software attach rate was abysmal. To clarify, an attach rate is what percentage of your overall market are buying your games. Mario Kart 8, the exception to the rule, as the Wii U's best-selling title, shipped 8.5 million units, where the Wii U itself shipped 14 million units, giving Mario Kart 8 an attach rate of around 60%. Games such as Pikmin, The Wonderful 101, and even the sequel to the human race's greatest achievement, Wii Sports Club, inexplicably floundered with absolutely abysmal attach rates. The Wii U failed as a casual player's system and as a Nintendo fan's system. It had an identity crisis. The Wii U was a console directed towards casuals and Nintendo fans, but the casuals didn't care, and plenty of Nintendo fans had jumped off the bandwagon in the Wii era, feeling uncatered to. Due to its underpowered nature, on par roughly with last-gen machines from Sony and Microsoft, it didn't attract core players from other platforms. It existed as a Nintendo fan's console and didn't do enough to convince even them. Then President Satoru Iwata famously took a substantial pay cut to avoid layoffs en masse. Nintendo were being kept afloat by the Nintendo 3DS, a system that had a rocky start but soon came to be Nintendo's only leg to stand on after a massive price drop. Nintendo were losing in this casual arms race against Apple, and they simply refused to endorse mobile gaming in any form. Iwata said that to do so would be to forsaken the identity of Nintendo. However, in 2014, Nintendo had to reassess. They knew that the Wii U was an unsalvageable disaster. To not act would be suicide. They were drowning in the blue ocean they once ruled. It was that year then, in 2014, that Iwata, Tatsumi Kimishima, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Genyo Takeda put in place a new plan. A system for the future. A system known as the Nintendo NX. Before his tragic death in 2015, Satoru Iwata struck a deal with Japanese mobile developer DeNA to publish various Nintendo games on mobile. This was a massive departure from Nintendo's original stance and is telling in regards to their desperate mindset at the time. They needed something they could fall back on should Nintendo NX fail. Reggie Fils-Aimé, former president of Nintendo of America, has since spoken about how NX was truly make or break for Nintendo. As evidenced by their foray into mobile gaming, Nintendo were bracing themselves for a reality in which they became third-party developers. Never in its history had Nintendo ever resigned themselves to such a fate, even after the unsuccessful GameCube. The fact that such a future was ever in question showed just how desperate they were. Yoshiaki Koizumi was to lead the project known as Nintendo NX. After many meetings, the core concept of the NX was decided. They would continue their efforts following in the Blue Ocean strategy, but would take it from another angle. Casuals were not the primary demographic anymore, but they were nonetheless welcomed. Consoles in the market at the time were directed at core players. Nintendo made a concerted effort to welcome casual fans, while unlike the Wii and Wii U, not compromising on their integrity to core fans. One of the Wii U's biggest failings was its identity. Nobody outside of the Nintendo fan bubble knew what its core concept was. The Wii U gamepad was a strange accessory, one that didn't convey clearly that this was a generational leap. Plenty simply believed it to be an add-on to the Wii. Nintendo learned from this and vowed not to make such a mistake with the NX. Nintendo NX was to be an amalgamation of all of Nintendo's older systems. It would incorporate the portability of the Game Boy, GameCube, and DS line. It would utilize the Wii's motion control technology. It would emphasize local multiplayer like the Nintendo 64. It would have a tablet controller like the Wii U. It would appeal to casuals and core players without skimping on integrity, just like the Super Nintendo and the NES. Nintendo's handhelds were always more successful than their home console counterparts, and as such, Nintendo decided that NX would be the best of both worlds, a hybrid home and portable console known as
Nintendo Switch!
The Nintendo Switch was the realization of the Wii U's potential. The Wii U was only a half step in the portable home hybrid direction. Yes, its tablet was portable, but only in an inconsequential way. You had to be within 10 meters of the console or else the screen would simply cut out, losing connection. The Switch would be the realization of this core concept. It could go anywhere. No tether needed. Portable video games were all the rage, what with iPads and mobile gaming. Nintendo looked to cash in on the casuals with a tablet of their own, while simultaneously creating a device to complement core players' existing home consoles. The Nintendo Switch was designed to be a casual's main system, and a perfect accompaniment to a core player's existing system. This was killing two birds with the one tablet. Why bother competing exclusively for the same home console or tablet market as the opposition when you can carve out your own niche doing both at the same time? In designing the remote, Kimishima spoke of how Nintendo Switch took inspiration from the Wii. He spoke of how people had suggested that they should design a smaller version of the Wii remote so that it could be strapped to an arm or a leg in Wii Fit. This was the idea behind the Joy-Con, a unique remote that was as small as it was complex. Joy-Con would utilize motion control, resembling the aforementioned mini Wii remote. It would be designed so that, like the Wii remote, two could be held vertically, resembling a Wii remote and nunchuck combo, or one could be held horizontally for local multiplayer. Each console would come with two Joy-Cons, meaning that each system already had two remotes for local play, or one bisected remote for single player action. Local multiplayer and casual play was de-emphasized by Sony's PlayStation and Microsoft's Xbox. Nintendo were to pick up the slack. To make sure they didn't compromise their integrity, Nintendo shifted the developmental focus of Eiji Aonuma's Legend of Zelda team to the Nintendo Switch. Their ambitious new project titled Breath of the Wild was initially planned as a Wii U exclusive. Instead, it became a dual release for Nintendo's Switch. This was crucial. Nintendo's latest and greatest needed a core-focused experience like this upcoming Zelda project. They couldn't bank on another lightning in the bottle Wii Sports experience. They needed a core-skewed title. Finally, in 2015 and 2016, Nintendo began to roll back on supporting the Wii U. They began to slow down the already snail-like pace at which first-party titles released, conserving most of their developmental energy to come out swinging with the Nintendo Switch. Fans naturally felt frustrated. They had invested in a new ecosystem in the Wii U and felt betrayed when Nintendo decided it was time to pull the plug. To add to their bemusement, Nintendo kept fans in the dark as to what NX was until what was essentially the last minute. At 2016's E3 convention, many fans presumed that Nintendo, as was tradition, would unveil their latest system at the expo. No such luck. Instead, Nintendo showcased their new Zelda project titled Breath of the Wild and announced it would be coming to NX and Wii U in 2017. Fans did not take kindly to Nintendo's showing. They wanted all the details on the upcoming NX. Fans were rightfully concerned. Should NX fail or underwhelm, it would be the end of Nintendo as they knew it. It would be 3 more months before Nintendo would pull back the curtain on the NX. Finally, after months and years of speculation, Nintendo announced that the reveal of NX would be happening in September. Nintendo fans around the world braced for impact. The tension online was palpable. This was make or break. Nintendo needed a win. Anything else would spell the end for Kyoto's crown jewel. On that day, Nintendo, after much anticipation, finally revealed the Nintendo Switch in a short trailer. To Nintendo's great relief, they blew people's expectations out of the water. As it happened, a hybrid home console was exactly the kind of innovation people could get on board with. There would be no other news from Nintendo until January, where they would make a massive statement of intent. Nintendo revealed a new Super Mario, a sequel to the acclaimed Splatoon, an innovative fighting game titled ARMS, a Wii Sports-esque party game called 1-2 Switch, a massive amount of support from a variety of third parties, and that the hotly anticipated Breath of the Wild would be a launch title. Things were certainly looking promising, but many were worried that the $300 asking price was too steep. and that the 3-hour battery life was too weak. Fans would have to wait for Nintendo Switch to launch on March 3rd, 2017 to find out. Fans around the world held their breath. Nintendo Switch hit the ground running, instantly selling out around the world. The system was flying off shelves, out of stock as soon as it was in. There were queues miles long in Japan for the chance to purchase one. People within Nintendo breathed a sigh of relief. Things were certainly looking like they were on the up. Nintendo Switch's momentum was simply unstoppable. Its launch had parallels with the Wii, a critically acclaimed Zelda title, a system flying off shelves, and an unprecedented amount of fervor for genuine, honest-to-God innovation. You can't talk about the launch of the Nintendo Switch and not talk about the fervor over Breath of the Wild. Critics were swept off of their feet, momentarily making Breath of the Wild the best reviewed game in history. Without it, Nintendo Switch would quite possibly have fallen flat on its face. Luckily, there were enough people who went out and picked up a Nintendo Switch solely to play Breath of the Wild. For a while, the latest and greatest in the Zelda series had a 101% attach rate, meaning that more people had bought copies for the Nintendo Switch version than there were Switches sold. The hype for the Switch was matched only by the Wii. High praise indeed for Nintendo's little tablet that could. Nintendo would go on to have a stellar year. They were simply unrelenting. Thanks largely to the Wii U's trickle of first-party games towards the end, there was a new first-party release for their system each and every month, with 2 games from first-party studios making the Game of the Year shortlist. The Wii U walked so that the Nintendo Switch could run. It was the hot ticket item for that Black Friday and, well, has been for every Black Friday since. Nintendo Switch has gone on to become Nintendo's most successful system to date. Not in raw numbers, mind you, but by the metric of software attach rate. In pure raw numbers, Wii is still Nintendo's biggest success. However, a vast majority of the people who picked up a Wii did so for Wii Sports alone, and as such, despite there being many more millions of Wiis sold, its market was unhealthy at best. What percent of the Wii's audience would pick up a new Legend of Zelda or Super Mario, not to mention obscure franchises such as Pikmin or Metroid? And what percent of the Wii's audience would be on the bandwagon for its successor, the Wii U? Very few, as it turned out. Contrast that to the Switch. The Nintendo Switch has broken records left, right and centre, setting new standards in the industry for software attach rates. It has the highest selling Animal Crossing in history, with over 30 million units shipped and counting. It has the highest selling Super Mario, it has the highest selling Legend of Zelda, it has the best selling Pokemon, and those are just the big hitters. Switch lays claim to having the highest selling Pikmin, the best selling Luigi's Mansion, the best selling fighting game in history, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Nintendo Switch as of 2021 has shipped 80 million units, closing in on the Wii's 100 million, while dwarfing the software attach rate of the Wii. Close to 40% of people who own a Switch own Animal Crossing or Mario Kart 8, which itself is a re-release of a Wii U game. 6 of the top 10 highest selling games have cracked 20 million units shipped, with the rest cracking 10 million. That is simply incredible. It is unprecedented. Nintendo Switch has the healthiest software attach rate in history. Not even Sony's PlayStation stands a chance against the Nintendo Switch's first-party attach rate. It is quite simply unprecedented. Despite Sony's dearth of excellent first-party offerings, they just don't stand a chance against Nintendo's loyal fanbase. People buy PlayStations for third-party software like FIFA. People buy Switches for Nintendo. And nobody buys Xboxes. Just kidding, Xbox fans, idiots do. The vast majority of people aren't buying the Nintendo Switch for gimmicks like motion control. They are buying the Nintendo Switch because the hardware is revolutionary, and because they're fans of Nintendo's first-party output. People who own a Switch for Nintendo first-party titles. This is excellent for Nintendo. By and large, hardware companies like Nintendo, Microsoft or Sony don't really make vast amounts of profit on their hardware, but instead through software. Recently, we've seen Sony take a price reduction of $100 off of the PlayStation 5 to guarantee that software purchases be made through their digital storefront. Add on top of Nintendo's ludicrous first-party output with unprecedented third-party support for Nintendo's standards, and you have the most successful console in the current market. Put simply, Nintendo have the most loyal fanbase and the healthiest market share. There's a reason that despite the launch of a new PlayStation and Xbox, that Nintendo's tablet that could outsold them. Nintendo, with the Switch, have brought back lapsed fans and cultivated new ones. They are quite possibly in the healthiest state they have ever been in 2021. The Switch is the best console for local multiplayer, the best console for portable play, and arguably the best console in terms of exclusives. Switch isn't Nintendo's best-selling console yet, but it's definitely its most successful. Nintendo are on top form at the moment, and it doesn't seem like they're letting up anytime soon if their exclusive lineup for the years ahead or anything at all to go by. Long may it continue.